The I'm Fine podcast is produced by L'Amour Media, LLC, and is run by Project Headspace and Timing. Project Headspace and Timing is a 501c3 that I started in 2017 after a veteran that I was a medic to decided to pull over on the side of the road and end his life. As an organization, Project Headspace and Timing works on veteran advocacy and veteran outreach. What that means is through the advocacy perspective, we try to connect veterans to other resources as early on into the process as possible. What that entails is early contact with veterans, forming a safety net with their family members, friends, and fellow service members, educating them on the resources, and when that veteran is ready to get help, we are there to make sure that they get the help that they need. The outreach aspect is put there to get veterans together to do productive and constructive things, whether it's out in nature, working with other businesses, anything to get them out around other veterans where those good conversations can happen if they want to have them. If you are interested in finding out more information about our organization, please visit projectheadspaceandtiming.org, our Facebook page, Project Headspace and Timing, or our Instagram, which is Project Headspace and Timing. And if you would like to donate to our organization, please visit our website, projectheadspaceandtiming.org, scroll to the bottom, and you will find a link to our Venmo. If you'd like to send us a check, our P.O. Box is P.O. Box 382, Manteno, Illinois, 60950. And if you'd like to sponsor or have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me at Eric P. as in Paul, at projectheadspaceandtiming.org. So on today's episode of the I'm Fine podcast, we are going to be talking about the devil's lettuce, aka marijuana. We're going to talk about our experiences with it, of which we have a few, and the pros and the cons backed by research. And then we're going to talk with Jen Baxter, who's the acting executive director of Balanced Veterans Network, which is an organization that I think every veteran needs to know about. And we're going to get her input on the situation as well.
Welcome to the I'm Fine podcast with your freaked out, insecure, neurotic, and emotional hosts, Eric Peterson and Brad Stozick.
Before we start today, I definitely want to take a second to thank today's sponsor. Today's sponsor is the Horton Group. People are at the center of everything they do over at the Horton Group, and they have been since 1971, which means that they get it. You're not searching for an insurance broker. You're looking for a partner, one who actually does care and promises to always have your back versus just putting some policy in place. So the Horton Group has you covered, whether it's business insurance, personal insurance, life insurance, or employee benefits. They have you covered. The Horton Group, leading clients to a higher level of performance. Please check them out at www.thehortongroup.com. So I know you've been excited for this episode.
Oh, so very much so.
I think this was like the first thing before we did any episode.
Yeah.
Like, we need to do an episode about weed.
We did. Yeah.
So here we are.
Here we are.
We did it. Look at us.
Oh, my mom would be so proud.
Look at us. What are your mom's feelings about marijuana?
We joke about it all the time. Yeah. I think
she was like, "Fuck you, bro," and fuck that weed. No, did I ever tell you what my dad's weed talk to me was?
No, huh?
So I really appreciated this. This was my dad, and I remember this conversation with my dad. My dad is one of just the most practical dudes ever. And I remember we were in the kitchen of my parents' house, and I was like 14 or 15 or something. And I asked him about marijuana, and he goes, I never tried marijuana, but I know some people that did, and they seem fine. That was the talk. That was the whole talk. And but here's the thing. I appreciated that because it didn't put any pressure on me about it, right, wrong, or indifferent, because I feel like some people take a guilt approach to, like, whether it's weed or anything. It's just like, this is bad, so you can never do it. And then when you cross that threshold and you do it, game on.
Oh, yep.
Game on.
This isn't so bad.
Well, and then it opens the floodgates, and then you're like, well, I already did this, so fuck everything else. Like, and that can put you in a real bad place where it's more, I feel like it leaves you more open to overdosing or doing shit you shouldn't be doing. So for my dad to like just not put any pressure about it and be like, maybe it's fine. I was like, okay, well, I mean, I didn't feel bad when I tried it, and I was like, this isn't so bad. You know what I mean? But when did you start smoking weed? Like, what was your first experience with weed?
Geez, my first experience. So it was in high school once. I don't know. I was with a girlfriend at the time, and her sister smoked. And then, dude, ironically, the next day or like 2 days later, I got arrested. Right?
For that?
No, no, not at all. So I was driving.
Brad.
I know, right? I'm a bad man, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, I was
Lock
driving.
Up your daughters.
And I was like, I'd never been pulled over in trouble with the cops, so my eyes were glossy because I was about to cry, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And this police officer's like, wow, how much weed have you smoked today? And I was like, none. He's like, nope, get out. So he took me out of the car. He goes, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where's the weed at? You got a bong? You got a bowl? What do you bring? I was like, I have nothing on me. Like, and
I'm
then,
just terrified right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, he arrested me, impounded the car.
Holy shit.
Yeah, I called my mom and I was like, "Hey, mom, I just got pulled over for driving under driving under the influence of cannabis." And she goes, "What campus are you on?"
Oh my god.
And I was like, "No, okay."
Yeah.
so yeah, that was my first experience with marijuana. So,
but you didn't even smoke. You were just freaked out.
No, not
so
at the time. I had smoked like 2 days before.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And I thought it was like karma, you know, like, oh, I'm a bad person. I smoke, so I'm getting,
okay,
you know what I'm saying? But yeah, no, dude, I wasn't. And then up until 2019 when I got my medical card, I didn't touch the stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
And what brought you to the point where you just started enjoying it on either a recreational or a regular basis?
I did use it as a medicine.
Yeah.
It got me through the day. You know, I even my wife, she's like, man, just go take some time and go smoke because you're really, I'd be irritable. I'd be angry all the time. And then I would go take a couple hits off the vape pen and whole new guy.
Yeah. And I feel like the pendulum swings, right? And so like you had this time where weed was like the worst thing ever and vilified and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And then it swung the other way where people were like, do all of the weeds, do all of it, like smoke it all. You know what I mean? I'm like, no, that's not the answer either. Like
no.
my opinion about it, and I think I'm always very honest about it whenever anybody asks, is I feel like it's a drug like anything else and should be treated like one. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I mean that it's something that you need to understand, that needs to be studied, that has a dosage, that it's something that needs to be respected, because I do think, yeah, if you smoke a ton of weed, I like all the time, and granted, there's always outliers. And so I'm not trying to make this terrible blanket statement, but like, yeah, there's a possibility it's not going to be super beneficial for you if you just smoke a shit ton of weed and you just can't get out of bed. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Or for me, well, and to back up, my first experience really with marijuana was, I think I was introduced to it in high school, and it was the kind of thing where like I tried it and I was like, okay. And the first time I smoked, I don't think I got high. And so I thought it was like whatever. I didn't really care, because again, there was really no pressure on me to like it or to not like it because of my dad. So I was just like, whatever. And then I didn't do it for a long time, joined the military. And then after that, I think some of the crowds that I was hanging out with, some people smoked weed. And so I tried it here and there. And then I was like, okay, yeah, I saw its benefit. I've never been a big drinker. Yeah. Like, again, I would kind of attribute that to my dad, because he didn't put pressure on that either. And my dad's not a big drinker. He would just, have the occasional cocktail or beer.
Yeah.
And so, I didn't like the way alcohol made me feel, whereas I like the way that weed made me feel. And at the time where I was using it, when I was like in my earlier 20s, I didn't have nearly the amount of responsibilities that I do now. So it's like it was a lot more fun because of that. And so I don't think I was looking at it so much as an actual medication then, as I was just looking at it as something to have fun. Yeah. Whereas now I very much look at it as a medication. Oh, absolutely. As far as how I use it, when I use it, what I use it for, and how much that I use. Yep. You know what I mean?
Best antidepressant I've ever been prescribed.
Yeah, dude, because I've been prescribed miscellaneous things, and when I kicked those and started, using weed, just kind of smoking weed, I found the benefit to it. Yep. And my honest opinion, again, with weed is like, especially my issue with it is how the education around marijuana was and the stigma that was always around marijuana and how it was just kind of held over us like it's this terrible, scary thing.
Yep.
Because now you're bringing in a lot of other emotions into this situation, which could really impact somebody's usage with it. So I think that's kind of scary.
Yeah.
But I mean, all in all, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, I think, I believe, and this was a quote from a Stoic, that luck is when preparation meets opportunity, right? And so my thought on when it comes to weed, when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to any of those drugs, any drugs really in general, whether they're prescribed or whatever, is you just have to be careful at if you in life want to get lucky, whether it's you want to get a job, you want to get a girl, you want to get whoever, whatever it is that you are hoping to achieve, I think you just have to be cognizant of the things that can limit your ability to prepare and the opportunities that you have. And so to that regard, as a young person with marijuana, I can see how weed could limit your opportunities to get lucky as a young person. You want to go to college, you want to start whatever, because that could potentially limit the ability to prepare, limit the opportunities that you could have. Now, it could also create them, depending on if you're a creative person. Maybe it helps you be creative, to write, to paint, to do whatever. That's very possible. But like when I've had to talk to young adults about marijuana, that's been my opinion on it, right, wrong, or indifferent, is you just have to understand that it may make you less motivated.
Oh, yeah.
And depending on what you want to do with your life, depending on what your goals are and what you need to do to get there, it could limit those things. As an older person that's in a place where, hey, you have the job that you want, you're doing your thing, and you're having, you have a long day, you have a long week, and it's now, I shouldn't say that, because I don't want somebody to feel like they have to smoke because they had a long day.
Yeah.
But when you're at the place where it's at the end of the day and you want to relax a little bit and that's what you want to do, well, that's within your right.
Yeah.
I feel like, you know what I mean?
I've seen people wind down with a glass of wine or a beer. It's not any different.
Yeah. And show me a fight with high people. Like, show me that. And you show me that, I'm going to show you marijuana that's fucking laced with something.
Yeah.
Like,
oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? But anyway, so what, as far as like the history of marijuana, and now preface this with saying there's so much here. There's so much here. We're not going to cover it all because it'll take forever. And I really want to talk to Jen about a lot.
Oh, absolutely.
So as far as like, if you have more questions, you want to look into this more, obviously there's so much stuff you can find online, documentaries, podcasts, books, just so much you can find. But as far as the history of marijuana, what did you find that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so the first usage of marijuana dates all the way back to 2800 BC.
Yep.
Like
Okay.
That was a Chinese. Was in like Central Asia and Western China.
Okay.
Was the first usage. A Chinese emperor named Shen Nung, also known as the father of Chinese medicine, pharmaceutical. Oh, I can't pronounce that word.
Fuck that word, dude.
Yeah, whatever.
Yep.
He basically used it, and he found that there were medical properties, and he used it as that.
Can you imagine being that dude that just found weed?
Like, hey.
Like, he's just hanging out and he smoked. He's like, holy shit. Like, I need to tell some people about this. Like, that's fucking crazy.
And I've even, according to another podcast, actually it's called Great Moments in Weed History.
Yeah.
They did some deep diving and some studying, and they found that the story of the anointing oil that Jesus used on the little girl who's having seizures, he used 9 pounds of a marijuana plant. Like, no wonder why she stopped having seizures.
Well, and just, again, like from a historical perspective, and I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but there's been a lot of stuff, a lot of science, a lot of other stuff that's come out about, I believe, CBD.
Yeah.
When it comes to seizures and epilepsy and stuff, right? But yeah. Sorry. Anyway, yeah.
We're going to get sued by a bunch of Christians now.
Boop, 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 boop.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
Because you just said Jesus's healing powers aren't real.
Sorry. What we're trying to say is...
Sorry, guys.
Jesus healed this little girl with 9 pounds of weed is what we're trying to tell you.
That's exactly...
Okay. He brought in 9 pounds, and
So as your producer, I had to warn you that we're...
yeah, dude,
Sorry,
any of
guys.
that stuff that needs to be limited or cut, like I totally understand.
Yeah.
honestly. So,
No,
yeah.
I was kidding.
Great. Then
Joke.
leave all of this in then,
Yeah,
including
absolutely.
this part. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. So yeah, go on.
Where was I at? Yeah, so he found that there's the therapeutic side and stuff. And then they found also traces of marijuana in texts of the Indian Hindus, the Assyrians, Greeks, and even the Romans.
Yeah.
And the text reported cannabis to treat a vast array of different like health problems, including arthritis, depression, inflammation, pain, lack of appetite, and asthma.
That's very cool.
And then the Hindu legend holds that Shiva, which is one of their gods, he's the supreme godhead of many sects, was given the title the Lord of Bahang because the cannabis plant was his favorite food.
Yeah.
And then the ancient Hindus thought that the medical benefits of cannabis were explained by pleasing the gods such as Shiva, right? So they believe that if you had a fever, it was because it was the hot breath of the gods and you angered them.
Yeah.
So the marijuana plant would lower your fever down and bring your temperature back. But in actuality, that's from the THC, which works with your it works with your hypothalamus to reduce your body temperature. So that's kind of where we got to start in Asia and stuff like that.
Yep.
It finally made its way to the Western world in 1841 when William Brooke O'Shaughnessy introduced cannabis to the Western medicine after, believe it or not, after living in India.
Sure.
So he wrote of like the many therapeutic effects and uses that the cannabis had on the people and even of himself, and on a child who was having convulsions and like seizures and stuff.
Again, the seizure things keep coming up, man.
There it
And so weed got a bad rap in America. It wasn't just in America. It was really outlawed in a lot of countries, and I'm going to talk about that. But one of the things I like to talk about as far as where weed started having these negative feelings was from a movie, 1936, called Reefer Madness, or Tell Your Children. So this was a movie, and we watched part of it. I've watched part of it before, and I don't care what your opinion on weed is. Go watch this movie. It's one of the funniest fucking movies you're ever going to watch, and it's so unintentionally funny, which makes it great. Like, that's why it's so great to me. But so in the very beginning, I don't know what it's called, but it's got the Star Wars thing kind of going, where it's got the words that are going through, and you read it. And I'm not going to read all of it, but I'm going to read some of it for you because I think it bears repeating. So in the beginning of Reefer Madness, it says, the motion picture you're about to witness may startle you. It would not have been possible otherwise to sufficiently emphasize the frightful toll of the new drug menace, which is destroying the youth of America in alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana, and it's spelled the Mexican way, which I appreciate, so I'm going to say it that way, is a violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy number one. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then come dangerous hallucinations. Space expands, time slows down and almost stands still. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances, the total inability to direct thoughts, the loss of all power to resist physical emotions, leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity. Like, that's the beginning of this fucking movie in the 30s, and it's all black and white, just like, and the first thing I thought of when I read that was like, yo, where do you get that weed? That's some next level shit, right? Like, oh my,
in India,
bro, like, what is that?
Yeah.
And so in the movie, it was just, There are so many insane scenes in that movie. Again, just go get on YouTube and just Google some clips from that movie. There's a scene where a guy he just gets insanely high, and then somebody comes in to try to talk him down, and the guy walks into the room and he's like, "Hey there, I just need to talk to you for a second." And the guy that's high on marijuana takes some sort of like fire poker thing and just beats the shit out of him. They don't talk about why. He kills the guy, and while he's doing that, there's a lady in the background who's also high on marijuana, and she's just laughing in a way that I have never seen another human being laugh. Like if you were an alien on mushrooms and trying to mimic a human being laughing. That's how I would describe the way that woman was laughing. Everything about that fucking movie is insane to me. And there's another scene where they're just like playing the piano and they're just super high and they're just doing it in such an erratic, manic fashion. And they're all just like laughing in such a crazy way. Everything about that movie was crazy. So where did that come from? According to one website, budsltd.com, they said that the church maintained a very heavy influence in American society in the 30s. The Great Depression was raging on. Society was kind of falling apart, and people were questioning everything. And they were bringing these things up to the church as far as whether its use was okay or not. The church was looking to kind of find a sin to blame for the issues that they were seeing, and cannabis was becoming a prevalent issue. So it was an easy connection to make, and has been has quite a bit of support amongst religious folks in the early to mid 1930s. Now, like there's a lot of theories about why weed was vilified in the early days. There's like stuff with William Randolph Hearst and the paper companies versus hemp and all this other stuff. And like I found stuff that says that that's part of it, and I found stuff that said it wasn't. So again, do your own research, okay? Don't listen to us. We don't know what the hell we're talking about. That's why we're going to have Jen on here in a little bit. Like, we just know, like, we tried to read into it a little bit. And so I found there's a 3-part article on medium.com that also kind of gets into why weed was kind of, made to look so bad in America. And what they had to say, Mexico, so again, Reefer Madness came out in the 30s, and that's when America took a stance on weed. Mexico banned cannabis in 1920. The League of Nations, including the UK and Canada, banned cannabis drugs except for medical and scientific use in 1925. So even though the USA did not sign that treaty, it shows that cannabis prohibition was a well-established trend before the U.S. federal government got into the game in the 30s. One of the most important people in regard to the U.S. and their opinion on weed is Harry J. Anslinger. He's the longtime director of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, FBN, and the chief architect of America's original drug laws. Anslinger was the first director of the FBN and was created in 1930 and would rule the agency as his personal fiefdom for the next 32 years. Anslinger was a puritanical type, true believer in the prohibition of all intoxicants. He was an alcohol prohibition agent, and he thought that, the prohibition on alcohol would have worked if they had more cops. He was just, and when I first read that, I wanted to be like, oh yeah, this guy's going to be a lot of fun at parties. But the other side of that is like, listen, if you don't want to drink and you want to smoke, you don't want to do that stuff, that's well within your right too.
Yeah.
You do whatever is fine with you. It's just when you start to enforce that on other people, that's when I'm like, what? You know what I mean? That's where I got problems.
He also coined the phrase, staying off drugs and getting high on life.
I hope he did. I don't know if he did.
I don't know if he did.
I hope that he did.
Yeah.
Anslinger's hardline personal views shape policy to this day. He held that drug abuse was a moral and criminal issue, and he thought that it should be treated with very stiff penalties. And he was opposed to even the discussion of treating addiction as a public health issue. So he had a lot of issues with that, obviously. And like I said, there's way, 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 way more to that story. He was just one of the more prominent figures that came up when I saw this at the time. When I was younger, the best thing ever was when you would see those weed commercials, like, oh my God.
Yes.
And we watched a couple of them, again, preparing for this one, the old after school commercials. And it's like, everybody remembers them. One of my favorites, and terrible premise, kid shoots another kid, but it's the most ridiculous fucking commercial. And the only realistic piece of that commercial is, and what the commercial is, they show these two kids sitting in one of the kids' parents' offices at their home. Okay. And so they're sitting there and they're high, and one of the kids is holding the bong, and it just shows this same like period of time, multiple days or whatever in a row. And so it shows the two kids sitting there, excuse me, and they're like smoking, and one kid makes some stupid joke to the other, and then it shows another clip of them sitting there, same kind of thing. And eventually it goes to the kid, and he takes a gun out of the desk, and the other kid goes, "Is that loaded?" And the kid's like, "I don't know." Boom, shoots the other kid, and the commercial,
Weed kills.
fuck you. You know what I mean? And I was just like, yo, what? Like, that was crazy. But the most realistic part of that commercial was earlier on. One of the kids was high, and he said to the other kid, "There's like a mounted fish on the wall in the back," and he goes, "Yo, man, like, if your parents get divorced, who gets to keep the fish?" And I'm like, that's the most realistic part of that whole fucking commercial, because that's some shit that I would say.
Like, who gets the fish, man?
But all those commercials were like, they were meant to make you feel terrible.
Oh, yeah.
And they were meant to make you feel guilty
Yep.
if you even thought about trying it. And again, I don't like that thought process of adding guilt to it, because then it just makes you feel like, okay, if I do it, I did commit this problem, this issue, this sin, this whatever. And now the door's open for me to just do whatever wrong that I want, and to go so deep in the hole. But there are lots of pros when it comes to weed. So I wanted to be kind of careful with what I talked about and how I talked about it when it comes to the pros of marijuana. So what I'm going to read is per Johnson & Wales University. They said that there's obviously a lot of science behind understanding cannabis, but to explain it as simply as possible. Cannabis is made up of more than 120 components, which are known as cannabinoids. Cannabidiol, cannabidiol, is CBD. CBD is cannabidiol. And then tetrahydrocannabinol is THC. So CBD and THC are the two most well-known and researched cannabinoids. THC is responsible for the high that many people associate with cannabis, while CBD is a non-intoxicating, non-euphoric component, which you may have seen in the form of oils, gummies, drinks, and other products for medical purposes. So here are some ways that CBD has been shown to benefit health. Lowering blood pressure. A study conducted by JCI Insight in 2017 found that CBD lowered the blood pressure of human participants. It reduced their resting blood pressure as well as their blood pressure after stress tests, including mental arithmetic, isometric exercise, and the cold pressor test. Reducing inflammation. CBD has also been proven to help reduce inflammation and the neuropathic pain it can cause, according to a study by the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research. Preventing relapse in drug and alcohol addiction. That's crazy to me. So a 2018 study that can be found on the National Center for Biotechnology Information's list of published articles discovered that CBD can be useful in helping people who suffer from drug and alcohol addictions. A preclinical trial with lab rats determined that CBD reduced the stress-induced cravings, anxiety, and lack of impulse control that often caused people to relapse. That's fucking crazy. Like, so weed could help people get over drug and alcohol addiction. So, treating anxiety disorders. Anxiety is perhaps one of the most common affiliations that people have used CBD for. And a preclinical study found that CBD could be effective in treating generalized anxiety disorder, panic disorder, social anxiety disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Treating gastrointestinal disorders. Another recent study found that CBD and other non-psychoactive cannabinoids can effectively be used to prevent and treat GI disorders such as IBS, irritable bowel, inflammatory bowel, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, and more. CBD's, again, anti-inflammatory properties are key to reducing and preventing symptoms. And the big one that we mentioned a few times, preventing seizures. Decades of research have gone into using CBD to treat epilepsy and other seizure syndromes, and a recent study showed that it can have positive effects in reducing symptoms and seizure frequency. And the last one, if all that shit wasn't enough, fighting cancer. Not only has CBD used to help alleviate the effects of chemotherapy, but studies have also found it can prevent cell growth and induce cell death in cervical cancer cell lines. And it has numerous anti-cancer effects that can help prevent a variety of cancers treat tumors, and benefit the immune system. So, yeah, it does a couple of fucking good things, right? Like, it does a couple of things.
So it fights cancer, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
Make it illegal.
So, but as far as the negatives,
Yeah.
I know you found some negatives too. There are.
Unfortunately, there are.
Yeah.
And actually, this is according to the Mayo Clinic. They still need to do further study to see if these really are negative impacts. But there, like you said, there are some. So increased heart rate, dizziness, impaired concentration and memory, slower reaction times, negative drug to drug interactions, increased risk of heart attack or stroke, increased appetite. Oh no, don't want to eat too much. There's a potential for addiction. There's hallucinations or mental illness, and then withdrawal symptoms.
I'm gonna say this because I'm sure the Mayo Clinic's listening. Fuck you, potential for addiction. What does that even mean? Maybe it's bad. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'd be like, okay, try a little harder. And a couple of things with that, like, slower reaction times. No shit. Like, dude. I mean, but is that negative? Like, again, do I think you should smoke weed and operate heavy machinery? No, I fucking don't. In my mind, I hold it to the same standards as alcohol or anything else. Like, you should not. I personally don't think you should smoke weed and drive just because, again, slower reaction times, and all that other kind of stuff. Like, I just, it would make sense when you're doing something that requires you to be just clear mind, sober mind, then I don't think you should be drinking. I don't think you should be high or any of that shit, unless you're one of those outliers where it actually does hone you in on stuff. Because I know that there's some people that are like that too. I'm not, but I know that there's some people that are. So, I mean, are there negatives? Sure. Again, it's a drug and it has a measured dose. I feel like, and that varies from person to person.
Absolutely.
And so it's like, if you just sit there and smoke all the live long day, like, dude, you're probably going to have some problems at some point. And I have personally seen with some veterans, and I've talked to some veterans about this. My opinion is that weed can be a very great thing for veterans, but also at the same time, I've found that veterans that I've dealt with that might have some other type of psychological issues, it can make them extremely paranoid. It can push them to that place. And in my own self, I found that it was making me a little bit more paranoid. It was doing all those things that I did not like. And I realized that I needed to take my dosage down. But the great thing about weed is I did that immediately. And there was zero issues. And I also don't smoke all the time and never have any issues. I will go days, weeks, months without smoking at times, just for whatever reason. Sometimes I just like to know that I don't rely on anything. And so I'll just stop smoking for a while just because of that. And I have yet to like have the itches or whatever where I'm like, I gotta go smoke. I'm just like, no, I'm fine if I don't do it. You know what I mean? And it's nice to be able to have that type of control with a substance. You know what I mean?
And I could see where that's not easy for like a narcotic. After my surgeries, they prescribe, and I was afraid to take them. And I've had people comment like, "Wow, I'm surprised you're not addicted to narcotics. You've had 5 brain surgeries. How are you?" And I'm like, "Because I didn't take them. I took one like the day after surgery. That was it, man.
Yeah, dude.
That was it. I did." Yeah.
Well, and it's so easy to get prescription medications from the VA. And like my back, like I've said before, is fucked up. Like it looks like a Jenga tower that's about to fall over. And all I got to do when I would talk to my doctor and, after the first initial consult and everything like that, like when my back was bad and I would talk to her about it, especially during COVID when I wouldn't have to go in all the time and there's more virtual visits. They'd just be like, okay, you want me to send some muscle relaxers? Do you want me to send some pain pills? Do you want me to send some whatever? And like I tried all of it. And there was a little bit of time where the pain was so excruciating. I was on everything. And that was like one of the worst mental times for me when I was on everything. And now it's like I'll use the lidocaine patches and sometimes that helps a little bit. And honestly, I don't go above ibuprofen.
Nope.
I really don't. Because I'm like, ibuprofen, the difference I feel between ibuprofen and everything else is nominal enough where I would just rather use ibuprofen than all the other shit. But yeah, so today, the guest that's going to be on, as I said earlier, her name's Jen Baxter. I found Jen Baxter through my own use of her organization's services. So I was contacted, it was during COVID, to participate in like a study through an initiative called Operation 1620. So I was contacted and I was asked about the issues that I was dealing with from that veteran side and if I wanted to try some CBD products based on those issues. And I thought it was really cool. So told them about my back pain, told them about my anxiety, depression, PTSD, trouble sleeping, and Operation 1620. Based on that, they sent me a couple of things. Like they sent me a balm for my back and a couple of pills, and a couple of vape cartridges that I could try. And then they sent me a questionnaire to evaluate each of those things and to see what my opinion was on everything, which I thought was really cool. So Operation 1620, to my understanding, is a part of a larger organization called Balanced Veterans Network. After having such a great experience with them, I reached out to Balanced Veterans Network to see if they'd be interested in being on an episode, and lo and behold, thankfully, to their wonderful executive director, Jen Baxter, she was all about it. So when we come back, we will be talking with acting executive director of Balanced Veterans Network, Jen Baxter. So today we are honored to have acting executive director of Balanced Veterans Network with us, Jen Baxter. Balanced Veterans Network offers a whole host of programs to include mental wellness, movement, Project Triangle, and Operation 1620. And we are really excited to hear about how she got here, how she found her way, and a lot about what her input is in regard to the world of marijuana. So Jen, thank you so much for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate
Yeah,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about your background as far as like your history in the military and what brought you up to this point in your role with BVN.
Sure. Well, I entered the Air Force in 98, took a year off, graduated high school in 97, went into the security forces career field, and grew up in a house full of police officers. So I figured why not continue down that path. I really enjoyed the work and felt like I had a passion for it, and started my military career in 98 and had a variety of law enforcement jobs. I was on the Marine Patrol section in Tampa, Florida after 9/11, which was really cool. I did some brig duty out in San Diego on Miramar and worked as a criminal investigator for a while when I was stationed in Shepherd, coincidentally helping OSI with about 30 drug cases at one point in time, so to include marijuana. So where I am now is a complete contradiction in some ways to what I was doing in my career. So throughout my career, I had some injuries and surgeries that happened, and I was stationed out in San Diego at the brig, and in 2011 timeframe, had a few foot surgeries that didn't go very well, back to back to back, and with that came prescription for pain meds, one right after the next, and went up for a medical evaluation board and was medically retired, a little over 14 years of being in. So at the end of 2012, I was medically retired. 90% VA right out the gate. So had a pretty good file of things that had happened, back surgery, knee surgery, just a bunch of different things throughout my career, and had pain pills prescribed to me in the past, never had an issue with them, always had extras, always got rid of them. And having back-to-back surgeries and the consistent flow of pain meds, at one point in time, they gave me fentanyl patches. It was just this vicious cycle. And so I was on these prescriptions for a couple of years before being retired. And when I did retire, I moved to the Midwest, to a place, didn't know anybody, didn't have any community, didn't have any idea of what I was going to do next, and went into the VA healthcare system. And within a year or so after moving there, I was on 600 pills a month being prescribed through the VA. So sleeping pills, anxiety, PTSD, depression meds, narcotics, morphine. I mean, it was just 4 different meds, 600 a month. This is what I had gotten to. And I was rated unemployable at the time. And so it's like, what do you do? 14 years of service, of this consistent job, consistent community, everything that you have to go through TAPS, transition, program. Here's how you write a resume. Don't wear this cologne to an interview. Good luck. I mean, that's
Yep.
pretty much what I got out of it, except for a little
Yep.
bit, like, call this person if you need help with this. And it's like, cool, thanks for like that setting me up for success. And my story is one of so many. I mean, I just hear the same thing over and over and over again when it comes to veterans in this situation. It's like, what do? You like try and find different hobbies, you try and find different activities, and it's just like you feel like you're just tossed out to the world to figure it out on your own in a lot of ways. So I was just existing. I was sucking air every day. That was it. Barely got out of bed. I was in a ton of pain. I ended up being, I think I was up to 230 pounds or something like that, which is the heaviest I had ever been. Wasn't necessarily abusing the meds because I could take them every 4 to 6 hours. So what did I do every day? I watched the clock. 5 hours have gone by. Here's another dose, another dose, another dose. And it was just every 28 days, every 30 days, I was at the VA picking up my prescription. The second I got in the car, I'd pop some, drive home. And it was just the cycle for 6 years, 6.5 years. I was on these pills and got out of bed one day to use the restroom. Like that was it. That's all I had was doing at this point in time, and had a thought cross my mind that was, I don't even want to deal with this. And it stopped me in my tracks. And I thought to myself, if I freaking told this to anybody, they would probably be really concerned with me. Like, I don't even want to get out of bed to go to the bathroom. I didn't enjoy music anymore. I didn't enjoy anything. I was miserable. I was just a complete miserable person. Living in a toxic environment, everything was just toxic. And I didn't know what to do at that point in time. So this was probably the summertime. Later that fall, I started becoming a little bit more active. I joined a bowling league. For what that's worth, in the winter, it got me out of the house. It got me around people. I got to meet some other vets. I made some friends, and that was the first step for me kind of changing my ways and trying to take control of my life and my health and what I was doing. And so a friend of mine had noticed that I had lost a little bit of weight, and she was like, hey, I'm doing this program. I'm a coach for it, Beachbody and Shakeology. She's like, I wonder, if you wanted to give it a shot and see what it's worth. And I'm like, I think I will, because I didn't know what to do, right? So anything at that point was worth a shot. So I picked a date. It was March of 2016. I picked a date that I was going to start, and I made a commitment to myself. I'm going to start small. I'm going to do my 30-minute workout every day, and I'm going to stick to the food plan. And the rest of the day, if I want to sit on my ass, I'm going to sit on my ass. But at least it was one small step towards something different. In the meantime, I had read and heard about veterans that were medicating with cannabis and that were successful with transitioning from pharmaceuticals, and really struggled with that because of my career and the values that were instilled as a child. And, I thought, like, how could this be a thing, but at that point in time, I hadn't heard anything negative about it. So I figured it's worth a shot. And living in a state where it wasn't legal, I didn't necessarily have safe access, what we would consider safe access today's standards. So had to just kind of like run the crapshoot. What I got was what I got. And actually it helped transition from the pharmaceuticals to cannabis. And so it was like one step at a time, one small one at a time. I finished this 30-day program successfully. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to get a gym membership. Got a gym membership, started out small, still have the things that I did in the military that caused me to retire, the chronic pain, the sleep issues, PTSD, anxiety, depression. It was just me managing them in a completely different way than what I had done in the military and for a few years after. So got a gym membership, dropped weight, started feeling better. My energy level went up. I couldn't sit anymore around the house all day. So I was going out and just going to a store or just doing something different and notice this energy kind of shifting and improving. And I was completely embarrassed to tell anybody that I was 100% dependent on these pills. I had tried stopping at one point in time, and it didn't end so well. I went through about 8 hours of withdrawal, and it was the worst experience of my life. It was horrible. But because my tolerance had changed so much, I was going through 480 oxy in 21 days, excuse me. So 3 weeks I was going through 480 oxy. And I was like, how the heck am I going to do this, right? You know, everybody says they recommend, you know, don't just stop abruptly, you know, try and decrease or whatever. So I thought to myself, I'm going to just do this on my own, right? What veteran likes to ask for help?
Right.
So I made the decision, like, okay, stop the short acting ones. The morphine that I had was long acting. And so it at least kept some medicine in my system to where I didn't go through withdrawal and I could still function. So I was using these slow acting morphine, the time release stuff. And after a couple of weeks, I was able to stop taking these pills. So my first win with them was I went to the VA. I picked up my regular monthly prescription. I was in the process of getting off of them, stopping them. And for 3 years, every day that I had gone to pick up my prescription, the first thing I did when I got in my car was take 4 pills with some Red Bull. And I picked them up, went to my car, got in the car, went all the way home and put the bag on my dresser without touching it. And I was like, that's a win.
Yep.
An absolute win.
Definitely.
And it's like anybody who is going through any type of challenges and wants to change their ways, like you have to pay attention to that. You have to honor that no matter how big or how small. That was a freaking win for me. Got it home, had put them to the side. I went out one day, pulled my back. I had been off of them for a few weeks and I thought, well, I'm really hurting at this point. I need something to help, and was like, well, I'll take one, right? Well, after 3 days, I was back to like taking multiple, and I was like, I can't do this. Like this is a completely opposite direction that I want to go. So I put about 900 pills or so in my backpack and went to the VA and had an appointment, sat down with my provider, and I said, listen, I'm kind of in a crisis scenario here. I need to get rid of these pills. And this particular VA did not have an amnesty box. Some do, which is wonderful, but this one did not. So I go to my provider looking for guidance, and she says, well, don't you have pain still? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, well, what about muscle relaxers? You want some muscle relaxers or anything like that? And I said, no, I don't want anything. Like, I need to get this shit out of my house. Like, what do I do with it? Go to the pharmacy. So I go to the pharmacy, and they're like, well, you're going to have to mail them. And then somebody overhears, you can't mail them. They're narcotics. You have to go down to the VA police station to dispose of them. And now I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, for one, I'm embarrassed. And I'm walking around the VA with a bag of meds, and I'm ready to just say screw it and go home. And who knows what would happen at that point. But I was like, I have to get these out of my house. Go down to the police station, and they pull out this big charcoal bin. And they said, we need you to dump each bottle into this charcoal bin. Nobody can do it for you. And it was like I was on display. They're like, oh, right. Hey, come over here and look at this. Like, look at how many pills she's got. And they're standing around watching me dump these pills into this thing. And I'm like, this is not cool. I had somebody, I don't remember who it was, came by and she said, is your provider so-and-so? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, this doesn't surprise me. She's known for overprescribing vets. And I'm like, cool. Well, glad that I could be on that list as well. I was in Leavenworth, Kansas. I could have gone on the street, made thousands of dollars on this stuff. But here I am trying to do the right thing. And there's no procedures in place, no policies in place at this VA for a vet to come in and be like, I got to get rid of this shit. Like, this stuff is killing me. And this is a process I have to go through when I could have just said, screw it, I'm going to go make $5,000 or whatever it could have been at the time off of these pills. So finally get rid of them, go home, got them out of my life, completely said I was completely done with it, and transitioned to cannabis. And I will tell you, I had cravings for them for a year at least after that kept popping up. So became more active. I tried therapy at the time. I just was not connecting at all with anybody that they were setting me up with at this VA. And by fall of 2016, this was spring, by fall of 2016, I left the Midwest and moved back to San Diego, and was like, I need a fresh start. I need to do something new. I need to get away from this environment. I need to basically kind of see what's out there for me. And went out to San Diego to live, and came out to the Phoenix area to visit a friend. And 6 years later, here I am in Arizona. I've been here ever since, and found in 2017 Operation 1620 on Facebook. It was a Facebook group at the time, veterans who could connect and share stories and talk about cannabis, and how everybody had such similar stories, whether it helped with alcohol issues or pharmaceuticals. Such a difference in quality of life. There were some people that were growing that, would teach about the benefits of growing your own plant. It was just a great forum to connect with veterans who are going through such similar scenarios. Well, Operation 1620 and Balanced Veterans Network ended up merging into one nonprofit just a few years ago. And in 2021, I was kind of poking around Balanced Veterans website and really liked what I saw, because when I came out of my situation, I guess you could say, I did a lot of journaling while I was going through it, by the way. It was like I started using cannabis, and then all of a sudden it was like unlocking all of these things in my brain. And I was like able to connect why I was the way I was with certain things, and how certain things from my childhood and military service connected to how I was now. And it was like all of a sudden I was having these epiphanies, for lack of a better term, and all these realizations of why things were happening, and was really able to process a lot that had gone on in my life and who I was as a person, and did a lot of journaling, and was almost thinking one day, like, why do I feel this good? It was like I had felt so horrible for so long that it was foreign to me to feel as good as I did. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that I wanted to do was to scream from the rooftops to as many veterans as possible and let them know, like, there is a better way. It's not just cannabis. It's not just eating differently. It's taking control of different areas in your life, mental wellness, movement, cannabis. And it's like, here I find this organization several years later that embodies everything that I had used in my own life, and everything that had helped me get to where I was. So much so, when I was going through this in 2016, that I had gone out one night and got a tattoo. I was like, you really have to have balance in your life. You can't have too much of this. You can't have too much of that. And I actually got a tattoo on my arm that says balance. And so we fast forward, here's this organization that's talking and embodying all of these things that I had gone through. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. Like, there's no other organization that I have found that's out there. I went to other veteran nonprofits, organizations, and was like, make me a peer leader. Like, let me talk to vets. Like, let me do this. And it was like, well, I don't know. And had some doors shut in my face over it, which is fine. Wasn't meant to be. I also learned that along the way. Like, you can't force something to happen. If it's meant to happen, it will. So I signed up for BVN as a volunteer ambassador in 2021, and just kind of had the freedom out here in Arizona to do my own thing. So we have members all across the country. The nonprofit is based out of Pennsylvania, and we have several people that are in Illinois as well. So I had the freedom, fortunately, to right down the road from you, nice. Had the freedom to kind of do my own thing out here. And it was just like, I went with what my gut felt and what felt right to me, and went out, and there was a groundbreaking, I would say, veterans cannabis event at the VFW here in Phoenix. The VFW supported a veterans cannabis event, and there was a bunch of vendors, and Veterans Cannabis Group was there hosting it. And it was amazing to see an organization such as the VFW be so supportive of something like this. And that was one of the first events, I think, that I worked where I had the most interaction with veterans that would come over, and they would look at our set up and they look at our literature and be like, oh my God, like I had no idea something like this existed. Or family members coming to the table and I'm going to give this to my brother. Or my brother's really struggling. Like he doesn't know where to go. And it's like, you hear the same thing over and over and over again. And it just makes you realize how much something like this is needed, to have that community, to have the safe space, to be able to go into our veterans only area and ask questions about psilocybin. It's so important because we need that. We need to support each other. We need to make sure that all of us stay above ground, because as we all know, it's too big of a problem at this point, at any point, basically. So was an ambassador. I was working they have some really cool cannabis events out here, and got connected with members of the wellness community and was able to get in some yoga events. And we do have online yoga classes sometimes, and breath work and meditation. And so we do bring that into the organization as well. So all that to say that it was a really great experience. I ended up meeting some veterans out here that signed up to be ambassadors. I had a small team out here that we were working different events together in the Phoenix and Tucson area. And in September of 2021, I'm sorry, I was in the organization for about a year, 2021 to 2022. And September of 2022, I stepped away from the organization for a little bit. Well, in my mind, it was indefinitely, and was called a couple of months ago, about 2.5 months ago, by one of the co-founders, and asked me to come back and consider coming back into the ED role. And said that they needed my help and asked me if I was interested in it, and thought about it for a few days and decided that I would go back and give it a try. And since I've been back, we've hit the ground running and just been really pushing forward to try and get as much content and as many resources out to the veteran community as possible. So we're working on that right now. And if there's some legislation assistance that we can support, we do that as well. So it's been quite a journey. It's been an exciting journey at that. And I'm grateful for all the experiences I had that have allowed me to get to where I'm at. So it's something that I'm completely passionate about, and just hope to do as much as I can with it, to be honest.
I have so many questions already.
That's
There's a few things that you
awesome.
said that, and there's a lot of really great points that you brought up in that story. And first off, I always want to make a point to say that I just appreciate you being able to share your story, because I think it's very important just for other people and veterans especially to hear that and to understand that they're not the only ones that may be going through what they're going through. But a couple of the things that you said that I really want to touch on from the very beginning. One, I feel like you can never discount that moment where you scare the shit out of yourself, where because you have that moment when whether it's depression, suicide, whatever, where you actually scare yourself because you know how serious you're considering something. And so I like that you brought that up, because
Yeah.
I've had that moment.
I've been there.
I know you've been there.
Yep.
And you have to listen to those moments so much. But a couple of the other things that you mentioned, those incremental wins, I love that, because I also think that's super important. The book Atomic Habits by James Clear, it's a great book, talks about that. Those small victories, you can't discount that. And even though it sounds like a small victory, it's definitely not. You not having to take the pills the second you get in your car and being able to make it all the way home, like in and of itself already, you're like, hey, like that's a fucking win-win in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And because how many veterans, every veteran that I know knows a veteran that got hooked on pain pills. And then what happened? They started with oxys, and then you can't take oxys forever. So then when they took those away, what happened? And a lot of the times, and some of the veterans that we worked with that had the worst situations were hooked on heroin, usually, which started from like a pain pill that they were taking from the VA that got taken from them. And so to be able to find other ways to go about it is just, it's more important now than ever. And I love that you brought up the VFW thing, because I actually found an article in a VFW magazine. I think it was from 2021. I don't have it in front of me, but like the VFW magazine was starting to talk about cannabis in veterans with PTSD and how they were starting to see some benefits and support it. And so I also loved how I found that they were supporting that kind of stuff. And finally, the other point that I wrote down, having a safe space, this is also going to kind of lead into one of my first questions for you. So it's like, you had to go from thinking that, drugs are bad, okay? Like, you didn't want to do it. That morally, ethically, weed was bad. And, that was your career. And to go from that to wrapping your mind around the fact that that might be the thing that helps you, I have to imagine that that's an issue that a lot of other veterans may have, depending on their upbringing and stuff like that. How were you able mentally to kind of go from being against it to accepting it? Was it like kind of a mix between, you were using it yourself, you were talking to other veterans? Like, what was it that helped you make that switch mentally?
It would have been a combination of just doing some research and talking to some people who were familiar with it, and just basically giving a shot. I mean, what did I have to lose? I was the sickest I had ever been, and that's the word I will use. Like, I'll show people pictures of how I looked back then, and I was like, I was sick. Like, there's pictures of me, I'm just like sweating. I have like the pill sweats going on even, and I kind of just figured, what do I have to lose? Like, nobody has died from this, nobody has overdosed from this. It's worth a shot. And I wasn't a cop anymore. I knew my law enforcement career was gone. I wasn't going to be able to do that anymore. So I just figured, we'll try it. We'll see what happens. And just basically went from there. And it was kind of a little bit of self-learning for a while. Like I said, I was in a state that it was not legal. So we have resources now in legal states. There's apps that you can look up and you can research the strain that you're getting, the potency of it, the side effects of it, what it does, what it's not going to do. And it's such a great tool to use to figure out exactly what you need to tailor for what your needs. There's something for the daytime, there's something for the nighttime, there's something for pain, and you get into the chemistry of the plant as well with terpenes and profiles, and you really get into the chemical makeup of these plants and see what it is that you need, and look for what you find, essentially. And sometimes it can be overwhelming because there is a lot here in Arizona to choose from, but I mean, I'd rather have it that way than be limited and just roll the dice on something that I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And like sorry.
I was just going to say, I love that you brought up the Atomic Habits thing, because we just got into that book recently in the first part. And last night we were talking about changing the system.
Shit.
Yeah. Just
Nice.
that you got to do the 1%, change the system. You have the goal, but you got to do something in the middle. And it's just like doing that 30-minute workout was changing the system of my daily routine. So.
Well, because how hard of that, or how it sounds so hard, but then when you think about it, if you can just make that incremental step in the right direction, no matter what it is, no matter if it's even, if you break it down to, like, when it comes to going to the gym, folding your gym clothes the night before, if you work out in the morning, and just having them next to your bed. Okay, well, at least you're slowly but surely you're making those incremental improvements. And then again, and I think it was in Atomic Habits where he talks about, if you just try to be 1% better, and as long as you can do that over the course of a year, and you do that a third of the time, you'll be 100% better than you were the year prior. So, I mean, I definitely love that. But one thing too that I feel like isn't, I don't know, just kind of unwritten rule. It's just something that I've always noticed within the veteran community. A lot of veterans that I know smoke weed. Like, a lot of veterans that I know have used weed, even if they weren't open about it.
Yeah.
One thing I did notice, the veterans that don't do weed were officers. And I know that correlation doesn't imply causation. I'm not saying that.
Yep.
But other than that, I mean, it's always been something that was joked about, even when I was in, like, 2005. Like, they would joke about it. Yeah, when I get out, when I ETS, like, we're just going to hang out and smoke a big bag of weed all day to, like, decompress. Like, it's always been around. Veterans have always talked about it. I think probably in Vietnam, especially, where I really kind of kicked up the talk about it. You know what I mean? But it's always been kind of discussed. And that's why I just didn't know why it wasn't so accepted And so I really love and appreciate what you guys do. But before I
For sure.
go on too much of a tangent, Brad, what was your first question for Jen?
Yeah, I was just wondering. So what is your opinion on the relevance of marijuana in comparison to the pharmaceuticals, in regard to like wellness? So like, like in regard to your overall like well being.
Overall well-being, I mean, it's hands down. To give you an example, I went through rotator cuff surgery in 2018, and that was the first surgery I was going to go after I had stopped taking pills, right? So I was like, okay, let's come up with a game plan. Bought an ice machine, researched different cannabis products, edibles, flower, which is the actual bud that you smoke, different products that were tailored to pain management, inflammation, mitigation, and had my wife take the prescription of the pain pills. And I said, put these in the house somewhere. Like, I don't want to see them, like just hide them. I didn't have a craving for them anymore. I didn't care to have them, but I didn't know how it was going to go. And so just in case, just put them somewhere. And the way I felt, I never touched a pill. And after my rotator cuff surgery, never touched a pill, used cannabis. I had never felt better after a medical procedure. You get constipated on those pills. You get irritable. I get irritable. I got nauseous. All of those things, dealt with none of that. It was one of the easiest recoveries that I think I had. And then I naturally decreased, right? With pills, it's like you try decreasing and you get like a little jittery and you feel like edgy and uneasy. And it's like with cannabis, you just automatically decrease what you need to use based on how you're feeling. And some days you might need a little bit more, some days you might need a little bit less, and some days you might not need anything. And if you are a daily user of cannabis to medicate, you can stop one day, not use anything, and you're fine. You don't have withdrawals. You don't, like, that quality of life aspect in itself is amazing. You don't, like, just the irritability. I think my mood, you just low vibe, toxic mindset, miserable, just all around feeling just crappy and lousy. And then you've got sleep pills too that are in there, and anxiety meds and everything. And it's just like this cocktail of just zombie miserableness. Like,
Yep.
so it's like you have start to have a quality of life, a better quality of life. If you need to medicate before going into public, like, you can medicate with cannabis and feel better and find what you need, what works for you. For sleep, it's the same thing. And it's like people become social. People who stayed to themselves didn't want to talk to anybody. Like, you sit around with some vets and you medicate, or not even that. Like, it puts you in a different mind space, completely different mind space, where you don't feel so locked down into whatever it is that you're dealing with.
And one of the things that you brought up too with like the pills and the side effects, like, holy shit, some of those pills, the side effects may cause suicidal ideations.
Yeah.
And that's what it's supposed to treat, which is the most military way to handle that. It's like, I kind of want to kill myself. Well, here's a pill. It might cause you to want to kill yourself.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, none of that ever made sense to me, if that's a potential side effect. And in a past life, I was a private investigator for a number of years, and in the process of doing that, I would investigate a lot of special investigation type stuff and high value claims. And a lot of the times, the people that I would investigate were dealing with issues that came from the side effects of the medications that they were put on. But one thing that you also just mentioned, I thought was really important to bring up. When it comes to marijuana, I've always been the one to think that, and this was before I started looking at it in like the more professional, I'll use that word sense, like as a actual medication, but dosage.
Yep.
Like, I don't think a lot of people, when they think about marijuana, I just assume that they kind of just think about, oh, I'm going to smoke one bowl, one joint, one whatever. But what's your opinion on when it comes to marijuana and dosage? Because you mentioned earlier, which I agree with, like, pay attention to how your body's reacting to it and how your body's feeling, because you may not need to use as much as you used yesterday. And that was something that I personally had an issue with in my experience with marijuana, because I was just using a little too much of it. And at that point, I was starting to get into a rougher territory where I was starting to get more paranoid. And I realized, like, I just had to bring it back. But what's your opinion in regard to the relationship between marijuana and the word dosage?
I completely believe that it is an individual, and it's an individual thing.
Mhm.
Some people have really high tolerances for edibles, for example. Some people can eat 100 milligram edible and be fine, or need that for pain. I take 10 milligrams and it's like, that's it. Like, I don't want anything more than that. And it's all on an individual basis. Now, we should have a healthy relationship with cannabis. We should have a healthy relationship with food, right? It's no different. You can overuse anything in life. And I do see some people who, you know, for what it's worth, wake and bake, right? And if that's what you need to keep you above ground, to like get you centered for the day, do it. Like, if there's some people who, you know, medicate heavily throughout the day, like, it's not alcohol, it's not going to kill them, it's not pills. And if it puts them in a space to where they're able to manage for that day, that's awesome. It's funny you bring this up, this dosing thing, because I wanted to touch a little bit on a funded study that is currently going on in Michigan. That's a phase 2 clinical trial for veterans with inhaled cannabis. And it's a $40 million study, $20 million over 2 years, that is being funded right now in the state of Michigan. It's called MJP2. It's in phase 2. 320 veterans are supposed to be involved in this. And the FDA has had a clinical hold on this for a year and a half. They've had a clinical hold on this for a year and a half because they have an issue with self-dosing. They want it to be all measured across the board. And that's bullshit. It's complete bullshit. Yeah. Because you can't have two people that you're going to say, here's 10 milligrams of an edible. I know it's smoking, but just for example.
Right.
Okay, we'll use smoking. You have somebody that has a rolled joint, right? Some people might need 3 puffs off of that to feel relief. Some people might need half. Some people might need the whole thing. It depends on the person.
Yes.
And the receptors in their brain, and like how it just, everybody is different. So dosing, in my opinion, is absolutely an individual thing. And there's pushback right now to the FDA. So if there's a call to action on this podcast, contact your congressman, contact the FDA commissioner, make some phone calls and get this pushed through, because this money is sitting there. And this is ultimately to help veterans and reduce the suicide rate. And the FDA is refusing to do this because they don't believe that veterans should be able to self-dose in this study.
Sounds like people at the FDA don't smoke.
Well, yeah.
They don't. Sounds like they don't.
And also my thing is like, $40 million, like that's got to be some really good weed. And also second, where was that sign up form when I was in? It was like, hey, can anybody sign up for this? Like, I would have been all over.
Oh, dude,
over that. But that also leads into your next question, doesn't it?
Yeah. Do you see marijuana making its way into the VA in terms of like an acceptable treatment plan, or maybe not so much?
I am open. I've always been open with my providers and let them know that I have my medical marijuana card and that's what I use. And I personally have not received any pushback from it. There are other veterans that I know that have had it documented that they have cannabis misuse disorder or cannabis use disorder. I believe it's what they label in the medical records. It's becoming more accepted for providers to hear about it and to recognize it. It's just big government, it's like they've got that hold on it. And it's like you have vet after vet after vet with stories that are so similar that it's like, how can you argue when I look the way I did then to how I look now? How can you argue that there's an issue with that? Like, it's mind blowing that we have this study that's been funded for $40 million just sitting there because the FDA doesn't, it's not a real world scenario. Like, you can't collect data the way that you need to collect data if you are giving everybody the same dose. Like it just does not work that way.
So sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, you might not know this, but is the VA ran the same way as like a civilian side where the pharmaceuticals are like working with the doctors to make money? Is that the same for like the VA side, or is it, you know what I mean? Like, you know how like
I would
doctors
assume so, but I'm not entirely sure. But I would assume.
Yeah, I have
it's
no
the
idea.
same.
But
You know what I mean? As far as the contracts and
yeah,
who
yeah,
does
yeah.
what with what.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? I've gotten into the weeds with all that kind of stuff too, as far as like what drugs were being pushed
Yeah.
and noticing that that's the same brand name that's on the pen that's in the doctor's waiting room. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on that either, Jen. But I mean,
Big pharma doesn't get paid unless meds are going out. So and it's a government owned entity. So you never know. I don't know if there's any type of kickbacks the same way as civilian world or how that works, but the government's got to make money somehow. And
but it's also like, simply put, does anybody know of any multi-billion-dollar business that's working to put itself out of work? Like, I don't.
No.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm just like, kinda, you know what I mean? So I definitely could see some issues to that. But also, so as far as the negatives, do you find there are any negatives to marijuana use at all? Like, what's your opinion on that?
I would say lack of education, honestly. If you've got
100%.
somebody with an anxiety issue that doesn't know what they're doing and they smoke a heavy sativa that amps that up, or if somebody has an edible, for example, there's some edibles that come in a size, let me see my camera here, like that, and you think, oh well, that's one serving, you take it, you didn't read the fine print, it's 100 milligrams, and next thing you know,
in.
you're worried that you're like you're done, and
Yeah.
the good thing is that you're not done. You don't need to go to the ER. CBD actually counteracts too much THC in your body. So if you're ever in a situation where you've over medicated, dose CBD, and within 30 minutes or so. Now, I'm not a doctor, not a professional at this, but it is known to decrease the side effects of too much THC.
Did not know that.
That would have been nice to know the other day. I forgot for 12 minutes. I forgot I was breathing. Like I didn't know.
You got too deep, and then you had to like remind yourself like how to breathe.
I had to like breathe hard out of my nose. I was like,
Come
okay,
on,
it's still
Brad,
happening.
You can do this. Yeah. No, I get that. What
Lots
about
of water, CBD, and just time. There definitely has to be the education, and that's why our mission BVN is promoting that healthy relationship and these little fine details that have to do with cannabis, because somebody could have a really lousy experience the first time they try to medicate with cannabis. And so start slow, you teach them the things, and you give them experiences and share stories. And so the negative side of it, I would say, would be just education and knowing what you're doing for that, and just making sure that you know what's going on. There's education, but also this is a completely other topic, but obviously there's lab quality assurance testing too, and that's no fault of the plant. That's on big business cultivators who are pumping out hundreds, thousands of pounds of product a week or whatever, and not really giving a shit what they're spraying on their plants for pesticides or anything. And so the downside of it is irresponsible cultivation, in my opinion. And it's like they're cutting corners. So, you got to look for cannabis like you look for food nowadays. You got to look for organic stuff and pesticides. And I mean, it's just, you got to do your research and know what you're looking for. But
well, that? Sorry, go ahead.
Negatives for anybody as far as too much. I mean, like,
oh yeah,
it's I can't think of any.
You can hear your hair growing. I don't know if you ever.
Well, as far as the education piece, though, I can't agree with that more. And because I, in my opinion, and you got to follow me on this a little bit, but like, I do believe marijuana is a gateway drug, and here's why. So the analogy that I use is I call it the starburst analogy, and I haven't patented this or anything by any means. But if I was to give somebody a whole package of starburst and there's 4 or 5 colors or whatever, and I told you every single color in that package tasted terrible, And then I left the room. Well, I think your natural human instinct is kind of to defy, question authority, whatever. You try that pink one, and you try the pink one. The pink one's great, and then you're like, "Fuck, I'm gonna try the rest of these." That was what weed was to me, as far as how it was taught to me when I was younger, because weed was put in pretty much the same category as all of the other drugs.
Yep.
And it was taught to me through other programs where it was like, listen, and they try to divide it up and say, well, like, this is a Schedule 1 drug, this is a Schedule 2 drug. Bro, I'm in 5th grade. I don't know what any of that shit means. So in my mind, I'm just like, all of it's together. Heroin, meth, cocaine, marijuana, whatever. They're all drugs. They're all bad. So the easiest thing to get your hands on is going to be weed. You try a little bit of weed and you're like, this is great. And so when you say that to yourself, immediately I lost all trust in whoever told me that all this stuff was bad. And that's going to lead me to want to try and experiment with other things. So to that regard, it was a gateway drug because of the lack of education that surrounded it. And if somebody would have taught me that there was more of a difference between each of those drugs, then I think I would have taken a different approach to it, because I agree so much with what you said. We can't take this cookie cutter approach to it either, where it's like, everybody should smoke 2 bowls. Like, we don't, like, it depends on the person. One of my best friends, he will take 1 or 2 puffs.
Yeah.
And that's it. And he'll be like, I'm good now. And he's fine. And then I know other people that need to smoke more than that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so important to get outside of the cookie cutter way of thinking, to just say, it's X amount. I need to always do as much as the recommended dose. It's like, no, you try a little, you see how it goes,
Yep.
and then you change it based on that, right? And I think that's super important. And it's really hard for people to wrap their minds around, because I feel like it's so much easier to just lean on the doctor or the prescribing physician, psychiatrist, whoever, and say, well, they told me that this is the right dosage, so I'm just going to do this much, and I don't have to think about it anymore. And that gives you like a little bit of peace, I feel like.
Yeah.
Whereas with marijuana and psychedelics, same thing. I feel like you kind of got to
trial and error.
listen to yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Start small, start slow, like with everything else. Do what you can with the education you have and go from there.
Not
You know
this
what I mean?
guy. I hit the ground running, man.
Yeah, buddy. Go big, go home.
I did oils, like, because I got my medical card, and I just went straight to oils, and that just ruined me. And I carried my pen around with me all day.
Jen, do you have an opinion between all the different ways that you can take weed in? Like, do you have a personal favorite? Do you have one that you just feel like you think is better than the other ones when it comes to like edibles versus vaping versus smoking versus all of the other goofy things that they have now?
Oh gosh, personally,
Yep.
flower.
Agreed.
Is my favorite.
Such a
Mhm.
great high.
Mhm.
It is. It's my favorite. Edibles have a time and place when I need them. Vape has a time and place when I need to use a vape. You know, depending on the situation or the environment that I'm in. It's just, there's so many different options that you can use. I have an infused cooking oil, avocado oil, that I'll use in place of a regular cooking oil, and it's like a microdose. So microdosing can have great benefits. Infuse my food a little bit. It's the end of the day. I have it for dinner. And it's like I can decompress for the evening. So the different modalities are based on what you need, what your needs are, what you prefer. There's all kinds of edibles. I mean, everything from Pop Rocks that they have now, which is like, like the old school Pop Rocks candy, to infused popcorn. So there's just so many options, but my personal favorite, to answer your question, is flower.
Well, and the professional approach, and to get to be at the age that we're at and watch what weed has gone from and turned into now is so cool, because also being able to walk into a dispensary and having the person behind the counter say, okay, do you want this for like creativity, or do you want and you're just like, whoa, what?
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like it's so dialed in. And you think about the days of yesteryear, like if you ever messed around with making your own edibles, I don't know about anybody else, but like the mentality was, I'm going to put as much marijuana as I can into this 9x9 pan of brownies, and then I'm going to eat a quarter of a square, and I'm going to go to outer space. So, I mean, that was never the good approach. And then now it's so much more. It appears to me that it's so measured, where it's so much easier to figure out what your dosage is.
Dude, there's cooking shows
Oh yeah.
Have you seen Cooked with
Yep.
Cannabis? Have you
Yep.
seen that?
Yep.
It's like a whole science. It's amazing.
And I like that it's cooking with cannabis. I had an idea for a show and it was going to be like Chopped, but all the judges were high. But I feel like that's a terrible idea because every plate would win. Like
Nobody
everything
gets
would
chopped.
win. It'd just be every plate would have like cosmic brownies
Tastes so
sprinkled
good.
on
Like
top
even
of it.
healthy food, it tastes so good. You eat
Yep.
fruit,
Yeah.
and they're just like, God, this fruit is just amazing. It tastes so
Yep.
good. Like,
Yeah.
Oh my God. But no, what other questions did you have, Brad?
Yeah, where do you see what do you see the trend for medical marijuana and just marijuana in general in the next 5 to 10 years, would you say? Do you think it's going to be legal across the playing field, or do you think we'll ever get there?
I think we'll get there. It's been the progress that we've had even in the last 5 years has been amazing. Leafwell, who we partner with for certifications, is in 33 states right now. So it's getting there. It's stuff like this, this study that just gets held up at the federal level. And it's unfortunate that they're essentially putting veterans' lives on the line just for the sake of wanting it a certain way that's not realistic. But I think we'll eventually get there. It just, the advocacy work continues to need to happen. The storytelling of personal stories needs to happen. One of the greatest accomplishments, for what it's worth, was last year I was helping out with a bill that coincidentally had to do with cannabis testing, but there was a portion in there for veteran medical marijuana cards in the state of Arizona. And in speaking with a panel of senators, I had one individual that was very much against marijuana, and her culture was a heroin, it was a cocaine, you know, it was categorized.
Yep.
And the children that she dealt with, she was a teacher at one point, and her family as well. The children, it was taught that is a bad thing. It was like you could equate it to alcohol abuse or something like that. And I shared my story and explained to her the comparison of, you can abuse food just as much as you can abuse cannabis. And she ended up voting yes on the bill. Unfortunately, the bill didn't pass, but I was like, she heard my story. And the more people are willing to get out there and share their stories and show the difference in their life and the quality of life that they have, is gonna continue to help push this forward, in my opinion.
Yeah, I always find that, categorically speaking, it just seems like veterans, and I say this often, are like a great guinea pig. They just are, because it's one title that encompasses one of the most diverse groups of people that there could possibly be. And we're all under that one label of being a veteran. And so when you see the different techniques and the different therapies and all of the different things that are going in to effect, and you're seeing all these like grassroots nonprofits and stuff like spearhead these initiatives to try to do things to get veterans to stop killing themselves, to get over the depression, get over the anxiety. And it's so frustrating to see that happen on a federal level where it's just stalling out. And I mentioned this before we brought you on, but my experience, I found Operation 1620. I don't remember how I got into that, but they'd reached out and they were asking like if I wanted to try some products based on the different issues that I was having. And it was so awesome because I got to tell them, you know, I have significant pain with my back, sleeping issues, PTSD, anxiety, all this stuff. And then they were like, okay, well, based on that, and they gave me like a balm for my back and all this other cool stuff that I got to try. If veterans want to be a part of Operation 1620 or BVN, where do they go and what can they do?
We just released our new website. So it's balanceveterans.org. It's free to sign up. You do have to go through a veteran verification to get into some of the groups that we have in there, just for the sake of privacy and keeping the integrity of the community. But I would check us out there. We're on social media as well. But our new webpage, we're going to be releasing an app soon as well, which is going to be great. We are initiating a new project that is going to release content from all of our pillars every month. So we're going to cover mental wellness, Operation 1620. We're going to put together a educational series for growing cannabis at home. And part of our fundraising goes into reimbursing medical marijuana cards, a portion of that cost, as well as the mentorship program and grow kit giveaways as well. And then we'll walk people through the process of growing their own medicine.
That is so awesome.
That's very cool.
And if anybody wants to reach out to you specifically and they have any other questions, is there a way that they can do that?
Sure. My email address is jen.baxter@balancedveterans.org.
And you said you had somebody in Illinois.
I do. There's several members in Illinois that are not too far from you. So looking forward to that.
Yep.
Alright.
Me too. That's very cool.
Me three.
I really appreciate you making the time to come on here and share your story and talk about what BVN is doing, Operation 1620, and all the other initiatives. Brad, did you have any other questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams?
No, man, that was great. Thank you so much for being here. It was awesome.
Yeah. Jen, did you have anything else that you wanted to say? Anything else that you wanted to elaborate on that you don't feel like you got a chance to do?
No, I think I covered everything.
Yep.
If you want to give a call out to your congressman about MJP2 and ask them to support that, that would be great. We've got to get this. The money's there, the funding's there. We've got to get the FDA to get off this and get the ball rolling.
And we'll make sure, and I might reach out to you after this just to make sure we can get that right up and include that in the episode description as well, along with your contact information if anybody wants to get a hold of you. Jen, I hope that this is the first of a few conversations that we get to have with you on this podcast. It was really a pleasure getting to talk to you and getting to know you a little bit. So thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you both. I enjoyed being here. I appreciate it.
So I'm very glad. I really appreciated getting to talk to her.
Oh, that was awesome.
And hearing that story and getting all that information.
Yes.
And learning more about Balanced Veterans Network and all the cool stuff that they're doing. And just to understand again, to hear another story of a veteran that was pushed to their limit.
Yep.
And through their own personal struggles, they found a way out of it. And in Jen's case, it revolved around using marijuana.
I like that it's another story, like you said, that makes, at least for me anyway, I'm not alone.
Right.
It makes me feel like I'm not alone, and it's nice to hear other veterans and their stories. So
yeah, I loved it a lot. So I really do look forward to having her on again. I also look forward to being able to partner with Balanced Veterans Network for some potential opportunities in the future. We're hoping to have them over at our festival, Heroes, Hogs, and Hot Rods, this year, June 10th, so check that out. But we wanted to end this episode, understandably so, on a high note. So before we came in today, I want to talk about this a little bit, because this has happened to me multiple times, and I'm really curious if this is just like a Midwestern thing because of our hospitality, or if this is all over the place. We stopped and got coffee on the way in here today. We pull up, and the super nice, really just kind person that worked at Dunkin' Donuts was like, the person in front of you paid for your order. And I love that. And so obviously the only issue that I have with it, and you heard me say this to her, was like, I appreciate that, but how much is the order after us? Because I'm not trying to be a dick. If the difference is nominal, it's like a few bucks or whatever, totally fine. But I've gone to Dunkin' for a class or for whatever, and I've bought like $300 worth of donuts and coffee. And my luck, I go order a small black coffee, and they're like, somebody paid for your offer. I'm like, oh, cool, pay it forward. And they're like, okay, the next order is $364. And I'm like, okay, now I'm the asshole.
Bro, I mean, my luck, I paid.
That's true, which I appreciate, which in this case would have been your luck.
Yeah.
But it's happened, and the one nice thing that I loved about it too was how much it made her day.
Oh, absolutely, dude.
Because she was talking about how impactful it was on her.
Yeah.
That she got to see just people being nice for no damn reason other than it's just a nice thing to do. And I love seeing stuff like that.
You know what? And it's nice. I feel like it's taken some time, but after 2020 and the pandemic, it's finally nice to see humanity being humans again. Like
you just appreciate seeing that shit.
Yeah.
You appreciate seeing somebody do something nice for somebody else for no other reason.
Absolutely.
The other brief thing I want to bring up to end this on a high note is there is a business in our community. And I recently found this out. I was contacted by the Bradley Bourbonnais Little League, and they reached out to me because they wanted to inform me that a local business sponsored a baseball team for Project Headspace and Timing, which whenever an organization steps out of their way to do something to support another one, especially my own, it means so much to me. like in those moments, it helps validate me for like just everything that we're going through, all the issues, everything else. Like it really, oh my God, it's just so nice to have somebody prop you up like that. But they didn't want to be recognized. They chose to be anonymous. So somewhere out there, there's business that did that, and should by some chance they're looking or listening at this to this episode, I cannot thank you enough, and I can't be more thankful to live in the community that I live in, where we have people that buy coffee for other people for no fucking reason, and where we have businesses that support other nonprofits for no reason. And I could tell you they do it for the right reason because they didn't even want to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
So it's just a beautiful thing. I love hearing things like that. And I thought that was a great way to end this on a high note. So
Absolutely.
other than that, my friend, you got anything else? Are you happy we did an episode about weed?
Dude, stop saying that. You're getting me in trouble.
Are you happy that you're high right now? And that's why you're wearing your glasses. That's also why Brad has been wearing his glasses.
Always.
Every episode.
Every
he's just
single
high
episode.
as shit.
Yep.
But thank you again for listening. 8 months we've been going. I didn't even realize that. So it's been incredible. We couldn't do it without you listening. Thank you again to the Horton Group for sponsoring this episode. We look forward to bringing on the Horton Group again. They're sponsoring another couple of episodes with a few other sponsors that I'm really excited to announce coming up. So if you need anything else, you have any other questions, make sure to check us out on the I'm Fine Podcast Facebook page, YouTube page, or wherever you're listening to your podcast at. And we will talk to you again very soon.